Peace, this your host, Selah-shalom. And the topic of discussion today is called Abraham Lincoln Mentioned in the Oahspe. Now, when I first read Oahspe, it was controversial. It challenged a lot of my belief system that I previously had. But when I read Abraham Lincoln, I was like, man, they gotta be tripping now. But it was in there, so I just had to take it for what it was. And it was quite interesting to see that Abraham Lincoln was mentioned in Oahspe and was used as an instrument in freeing the slaves, although there's a lot of controversial surrounding that. But when we observe this picture you see here, which is said to be the original picture of Abraham Lincoln, and without a shadow of a doubt, he was a black man. Now, the way he was portrayed in history as a white man is astonishing, because if this is true that this is Abraham Lincoln, the next thing to consider is, who was this white man claiming to be Abraham Lincoln? They must have completely destroyed all pictures of the original Abraham Lincoln except this one. And they got numerous pictures of the white Abraham Lincoln. So this is an interesting, controversial issue, because it was said that Abraham Lincoln was half black. But this picture here shows he wasn't half black, but fully black. Now, maybe some of these Moorish brothers can give us some insight on this. And that's only if they're even aware of this picture, because I have seen no other conscious group show this picture. And if they had this picture, they would have made it public, because this is a powerful picture. And I haven't heard no Israelites present this picture, no Moors, no Muslims, no Comedians. So it's quite interesting that this picture existed and none of the so-called conscious families didn't pick up on it. Now, Abraham Lincoln is said to be responsible for freeing the slaves, but there was a lot of controversy surrounding that. But here I will read in Wikipedia about Abraham Lincoln concerning the slavery and freedom for the slaves. And Abraham being black to this degree, it makes a little more sense of his act in freeing slaves. No other president had concerns of freeing slaves besides Abraham Lincoln. And with him being black, it makes total sense now. Now, here's a Wikipedia concerning the Emancipation Proclamation. It states, Lincoln understood that the federal government's power to end slavery was limited by the Constitution, which before 1865 committed the issue to individual states. He argued before and during his election that the eventual extinction of slavery would result from preventing its expansion into new U.S. territories. At the beginning of the war, he also sought to persuade the states to accept compensated emancipation in return prohibition of slavery. Lincoln believed that curtailing slavery in these ways would economically expunge it, as envisioned by the founding fathers under the Constitution. President Lincoln rejected two geographically limited emancipation attempts by Major General John C. Fremont in August 1861 and by Major General David Hunter in May 1862 on the grounds that it was not within their power and it would upset the border states loyal to the Union. On June 19, 1862, endorsed by Lincoln, Congress passed an act banning slavery on all federal territory. See that? In July 1862, the Second Confiscation Act was passed, which set up court procedures that could free the slaves of anyone convicted of aiding the rebellion. Although Lincoln believed it was within Congress' power to free the slaves within the state, he approved the bill in deference to the legislature. He felt such actions could only be taken by the commander-in-chief, using war powers granted to the president by the Constitution, and Lincoln was planning to take the action. In that month, Lincoln discussed a draft of the Emancipation Proclamation with his cabinet. In it, he stated that as a fit and necessary military measure, on January 1, 1863, all persons held as slaves in the Confederate States will thenceforward and forever be free. Privately, Lincoln concluded at this point that the slave base of the Confederacy had to be eliminated. However, Copperhead's argument that emancipation was a stumbling block to peace and reunification. Republicans edit Horace Greeley of the highly influential New York Tribune fell for the ploy, and Lincoln refuted it directly. In a shrewd letter of August 22, 1862, the president said the primary goal of his action as president, he used the first person pronoun and explicitly referred to his official duty was preserving the Union. Now here are his words. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. See that? And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union. And what I forbear because I do not believe it would help to save the Union. I have here stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intend no modification of my oft-expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. So here's his writings on the subject of freeing the slaves. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation issued on September 22nd, 1862, and put into effect on January 1st, 1863, declared free the slaves in 10 states, not then under Union control, specified for areas already under Union control in 2 states. Lincoln spent the next 100 days preparing the Army and the nations for emancipation, while Democrats rallied their votes in the 1862 off-year election by warning off the threat free slaves posed to the northern whites. Once the abolition of slavery in the rebel states became a military objective, as Union armies advanced south, more slaves were liberated until all 3 million of them in Confederate territory were freed. See that? Lincoln's comment on the signing of the proclamation was, I never in my life felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper. For some time, Lincoln continued earlier plans to set up colonies for the newly freed slaves. He commented favorably on colonizations in the Emancipation Proclamation, but all attempts at such a massive undertaking failed. A few days after emancipation was announced, 13 Republican governors met at the War Governors Conference. They supposed the president's proclamation be suggested the removal of General George B. McClellan as commander of the Union. Enlisting former slaves in the military was official government policy after the assurance of the Emancipation Proclamation. By spring of 1863, Lincoln was ready to recruit black troops in more than token number. In a letter to Andrew Johnson, the military governor of Tennessee encouraged him to lead the way in raising black troops. Lincoln wrote, the bare sight of 50,000 armed and drilled black soldiers on the banks of the Mississippi would end the rebellion at once. By the end of 1863, at Lincoln's direction, General Lorenzo Thomas has recruited 20 regiments of blacks from the Mississippi Valley. Frederick Douglass once observed of Lincoln, in his company, he says, in his company I was never reminded of my humble origin or of my unpopular color. And after this came the Battle of Gettysburg. So here is information concerning the Emancipation Proclamation with Abraham Lincoln. And now that we have a black face on it, it sounds a little different. Now, as I stated before, Abraham Lincoln is mentioned in Oahspe. Now I'm going to go into that. Now in the book of East, Daughter of Jehovah, chapter 20, verse 20 through 35, it states, now this is during the time of Abraham Lincoln, what I just read within that time period in the Oahspe. So just as the Bible, the history of the Bible stops with Jesus in the 1st century, the history in Oahspe continues all the way down to the present era of the arc cycle of Cosmon, 1848, within that time period. So Oahspe covers over 1,000 years of history that the Bible is missing from the 1st century coming on down to our present time. Close to 2,000 years actually. Now, verse 20, Jehovah said to his ambassadors, take thy own inspiring host and go down to the earth to Washington, D.C., to the president, which is Abraham Lincoln, and hold this matter up to him, that he may understand me, for he is not bound in doctrines, for which reason my angels made him president, and for this purpose which I have in hand. Verse 21, and it came to pass that the president will hear thee, and he shall resolve in his own mind unto freedom for the slaves. But he will seek for some external sign, fearing he may have mistaken the angels that minister unto him. But I will provide a way for this end also. Verse 22, and the angels of Jehovah went to the President Lincoln, in a vision, like a dream, and they called unto him, and he answered and said, who art thou? Verse 23, and the angel said, such as come in Jehovah's name for freedom's sake. Behold, millions of his angels look down from heaven and will come to thy armies if thou would but proclaim freedom to the slaves. Jehovah's hand is in this matter. Verse 24. The president awoke and was troubled with his dream. Verse 25. The next night the angels came again and retold their words, and added thereunto, the great majority of the country is right for this matter. Though fairest this is but a foolish dream, behold, we will give thee proof tomorrow. Verse 26. The president awoke more troubled than before, but remember the angel said, we will give thee proof tomorrow. Verse 27. Jehovah said, I will make this matter a testimony to this nation, so that no man may gainsay it. And I will show also how my angels work singly and in mighty legions. Verse 28. Now at that time, there was living in Washington, D.C., a seeress, a female seer, through whom spirits spoke in her entrancement. And on the day mentioned, the angel spoke through her, saying, Go and fetch the president into the presence of this woman. Verse 29. And the president was told what was said. And when the president came before the seeress, the angel of Jehovah entranced her and said unto him, We said we would give thee proof tomorrow. Behold, we repeat unto thee, Jehovah is in this matter. Except thou proclaimest the freedom of the slaves, thou shalt not succeed. Do thou this, and thy enemies, meaning the Confederacy, the South, army shall melt away like snow in the sun. And that's exactly what happened. The northern armies ran over the South like play. Verse 30. The president's eyes were open, and he went straight away and proclaimed freedom to the whole 4 million slaves. Verse 31. Xerxes said to Leonidas, Thou great conqueror, thou shalt conquer me. Take thy 1,000,000,000 angels, and go with the armies of the north, and inspire them unto victory. Give them such strength and courage as they have not before manifested. And as for myself and my host, we will go to the armies of the south, and we will inspire them to believe they are conquered, and so make them flee before the soldiers, before thy soldiers. And this is the war, or the battle of Gettysburg, that they're referring to. And Xerxes and Leonidas played a role in that. But that's another story. I'll explain that sometime else. I just wanted to address Abraham Lincoln and Oahspe, because some of y'all say Xerxes and Leonidas, them niggas was in the 4th century BC. What they doing here? But it's a lot to this that you don't know that will have to be explained. But I just wanted to address Abraham Lincoln in this particular point. Now, verse 32. Thus these great angel warriors eluded themselves to war, and lo and behold, the northern armies ran forth over the enemy's country as if war were but play. And the southern armies vanished, disarming themselves and returning to their homes. Verse 33. The slaves were free. Verse 34. Jehovah said, Let this be a testimony that this land is the place of the beginning of the Cosmon era. There shall be no caste among my people. See that? Verse 35. Behold, I went to the Israelites. Now just notice how we're talking about slavery and the emancipation and freedom of slavery, and then it comes to a verse referencing the Israelites, showing you that the Oahspe correlates the Israelites with us in America. Now, behold, I went to the Israelites, and in that day I said, Keep yourselves as a separate people, for I had a work for them, which was to travel westward and establish me, the All One. And they came westward and fulfilled my commandment, whereupon I have blessed them. So here you can see Abraham Lincoln was an instrument in freeing slaves in the Oahspe, as well in recorded history. So I just wanted to put this video up to show and prove all this information that Oahspe contains, and to prove that Abraham Lincoln, based off this picture, was a black man. And with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings. Shalom.